Okay, so again, I'm going to be giving my overall thoughts on the movie in this opening part, where then I'm going to have a big spoiler section, and then we'll wrap things up, okay? Okay, there'll be breakpoints in between if you want to avoid the spoilers. Alright, so Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, it's going to get a C. Overall, there's some really good parts of this movie. I think it's well paced. There's some really well done action set pieces. It's very fun with some character banter. There's some good lighthearted moments in between all the action. And those all work. Unfortunately, it's done in by a lot of the supporting cast, which is very weak at attempt to warm over Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, while also trying to do something of a repudiation on the morals of Indiana Jones and the Indiana Jones franchise. That just doesn't work and kind of bogs everything down with a lot of just unlikability and uncomfortableness that unfortunately does not really help aid the story whatsoever, and begins to make things feel like a chore in between the nice action set pieces. So yeah, that's kind of why it gets a C. It just brings it down to being average.
Before the world discovered Indiana Jones, a young Indiana Jones discovered the world. For him, just growing up
This is Miss Prentice.
was the greatest adventure of all.
Henry was a remarkable boy and shows every sign of growing up to be a remarkable man.
Do you love me?
Question is, do you love me?
I couldn't help myself, Nadia.
Coming Wednesday, March 4th to ABC Television.
You're going to ask me to marry you. Please don't.
George Lucas presents The Young Indiana Jones Chronicles.
Wednesday, young Indy goes to war in Africa,
I won't let you down.
where he leads a secret mission and ends up with a handful of trouble.
He can't care for himself. If we leave him here, he'll die.
The adventures continue on The Young Indiana Jones Chronicles Wednesday. Tales of mystery,
I'd like to report a murder.
suspense,
He's dangerous.
So am I.
and murder.
I never said anything about killing her.
Victoria Principal in Seduction. 3 Tales from the Inner Sanctum, Sunday.
Okay, so again, this is the spoiler section. Skip to this point if you wish to avoid everything. Okay? Okay. So yeah, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, we start off during World War II. I think it's 1930... No, it's 1945. It's the end. The Nazis are starting to get overwhelmed. Indy and a fellow archaeologist named Basil Shaw are trying to appropriate some of the stuff that the Nazis have been the artifacts that the Nazis have been appropriating to put them in a museum. And in the process, they find out that a Nazi scientist named Jürgen Wohler has found the Dial of Archimedes. There's an actual name for it, but I could never write it down right, so I can't say it. So I'm just going to call it the Dial of Archimedes. And it supposedly can be used to travel through time. They don't believe that it's entirely possible at the point, but you know, it's only half of the dial. They have to find the other half would have to be found through a lot of shenanigans and an Allied bombing. They claim to have lost it in a Swiss river. In reality, though, Basil took it home to study everything. And along the way, had a daughter who Indy is the godfather of, named Helena. And unfortunately, as his studies began to overwhelm him, he started to have a mental breakdown. He gave Indy the dial to destroy, but Indy just took it and kept it with him because he believed it should be in a museum. We then jump to the summer of 1969. The Apollo moon landing has just happened. It's New York City. The big ticker tape parade for the astronauts is going to be held, and Indiana Jones is nearing retirement. As he's not at Marshall College, the one he was at in the previous movies. He's now in a new school, Hunter College. Unfortunately, it's like things are just kind of not working out for him anymore. Like I said, it's his last day. He's retiring. His students aren't even paying attention in class anymore because they don't seem to care much about archaeology. They only seem to care about the space race and the coming parade. And added to all of that, he and Marion are getting divorced. We'll get to those reasons later. And then suddenly, Helena returns and asks him about this, the dial, and that she claims to have possibly found the way to find the other half. uh, Indy said, well, the dial was lost in the Swiss River. But she said, I could swear my father was studying it, and he asks if she knew anything, and, if she knew of their last conversation he had with Basil. And she said, no. And finally he kind of caves and reveals that he has it. It's stored in the college storage artifact place. And it's there that it turns out the government agents are following them, and Helena turns on him and steals the dial and flees out into the crowd. Unfortunately, as these government agents were swarming, a bunch of them killed faculty members, and because Indy touched one of their bodies, and he puts his hand on a phone, and he's now wanted in for questioning of these murders, and he so now everything's just falling apart even further, and he gets he manages to get in contact with Sala, that's John Rhys Davies' character, who gets some passage to Tangiers, because he turns out, he did some investigating, and Helena is now like a black market artifacts dealer who is wanted by, I think it's Interpol. So, yeah, and added to all that, it turns out the guy who's been designing those space rockets that went to the moon is Voller, who is living under the name Schmidt and passing himself off as a physicist at the University of Alabama. So, yeah, and he's actually after this dial as well, and he's been employing CIA agents and turning them against the government because he plans to use it to travel back in time and kill Hitler just as he's rising to power so that he can take control and do everything right. And yeah, so anyway, Indy goes to Tangiers where he finds, and this is where they talk about the Temple of Doom part, because he finds Helena running this black market auction, and she employed a foundling child named Teddy, who is a master pickpocket. Again, gee, is that Short Round possibly? Yeah, does that not sound familiar? And, the only difference is it's not Indy working to, free children, then kind of helps reinstall his morals. It's that he has to remind her that, this is not what her father would have wanted. You're in this for the wrong reasons. I thought you were genuine in your interest in archaeology, but no, you're just doing this to make a quick buck. And she sort of points out that, what you were doing, even though you're trying to put things in a museum, is also just as bad because you're robbing other cultures. Like, you're not stealing these artifacts and giving them back to the people that they were stolen from. You're stealing them and putting them in a museum. Yeah, exactly. Which, of course, is now, like I said, that's kind of where it fails, unfortunately, because, again, the character of Helena is just not very likable at all. Like, she's just a much, much crasser Indiana Jones, and Indiana Jones is already kind of crass. So, yeah. So, yeah. But, after another chase scene and the fact that Schmidt steals the other half, not Schmidt, Voller steals, he lives under the name Schmidt, in my notes all say Schmidt, so I'm just used to saying Schmidt. He steals that half of the dial, and he steals some notes. They go to this spot where Helena claims she found this thing that contains directions to where the other half of the dial is. It's on this sunken ship, a Roman ship off the Aegean coast in Greece. And they hire Antonio Banderas to lead them on this mission because he's this expert deep-sea diver that Indy knows. Shock of shock, the bad guys arrive. They get the other half. They get Helena to sell Indy out, but she actually double crosses them and helps Indy escape while actually translating this thing just to where it is. The directions she gives them on this translation thing say to Alexandria. In reality, it's in Syracuse. Syracuse on the Sicilian coast, not Syracuse, New York. Because, Archimedes. And they have to find the tomb of Archimedes, which is where the other half of this dial is supposedly located. So again, but the funny thing is, they start turning around, but they turn around like way too quickly because Schmidt is following them, and you can see them turning around. Anyway, this all leads to the big thing at the tomb, and it's there they find on Archimedes' body a watch, and they find pictures of planes that he claims were phoenixes or possibly dragons at the Battle of Syracuse, and it's like, this can only mean one thing. Archimedes used this and learned of the future, but he didn't learn, of how to relate everything. Sorry, coughing fit. Anyway, Schmidt assembles the dial, like I said, explains his plan. He shoots Indy in the process. They take them hostage. They're planning to fly into one. Well, the way the dial works is it can discern where fissures in time are opening up, and then you can use that to time travel. However, as they're going up, and Teddy, the foundling that works with Helena, is pursuing them in a plane that he's commandeered illegally. By the way, Teddy is like 14, so you really should not be piloting a plane, is what I'm saying. They're flying into this time fissure. Indy realizes that Archimedes could have never figured out what continental drift is, and so just because they think this is going to lead them to 1939 doesn't necessarily mean it is, and it turns out it doesn't. It leads them all the way back to the Battle of Syracuse, where a Roman centurion fleet is shooting spears at the plane. It's hitting all the pilots. It's causing this thing to crash. This is where we get the big skydiving scene. And as this happens, the plane crashes. Voller is killed. Archimedes finds the watch and the other dial, his dial, because he's also assembling his dial at this time. And they're like, oh my god. And Indy, after he realizes what he is and he meets Archimedes, he wants to actually stay because he's like, look, I don't belong in that world anymore. And I guess I forgot to make the big revelation is before all this happens, as he and Helena are going to Greece, Indy reveals what happened between him and Marion, which was Mutt, their son, volunteered for the army to go to Vietnam, and he was killed in battle. And it was because of another rift with Indy that he did this, and it caused a wedge between him and Marion. It drove Indy a little bit into alcoholism because he's drinking way more often than this. And Marion, also kind of grew into a deep depression, and just they couldn't be near each other and left. Indy's, but like I said, now back to the Battle of Syracuse. Indy wants to stay, but Helena's like, no, you can't stay here. This isn't your time. You have to go back. And even Archimedes is like, no, you have to go back. Also you need treatment for that wound. You can't be, you're not going to get it here. You're just going to bleed everywhere and die. That's not really going to be very effective at all. And yeah, that's just, and eventually Helena just knocks him out. They get on Teddy's plane, they fly back to the present of 1969. Indy comes to, and it turns out that Helena also contacted Marion, and she and Indy make up. So yeah, like I said, overall the film has its positives. There's some, like I said, great action set pieces, good character banter. There's some really good humor throughout all of it. A couple of notes I would say is during the World War II footage scene, Indy commandeers a uniform to try to pose as a Nazi. Unfortunately, he's given away because it turns out he had shot this Nazi, so it's got bleeding bullet holes all over it. Wait, how did you get all those gunshot wounds and you're walking around? There's a couple other scenes like that where it's just like people pointing things out, and there's also a nice scene, like I said, where there's good scenes with Sala and his family as he's helping Indy, and Sala admits he wants to come along, and he's like, no, this is too much. Yeah, like I said, I can't even guarantee this is ever going to work out for everyone, and you have a family you need to raise. And then there's another bit too, I'm trying to think what it, yeah. And unfortunately, again, where I think this kind of falls apart is, again, Helena just is not a likable character. Like, she gets to be better, but it's not that much better, and she's just very snide and snotty throughout the whole thing. Like, you know, the second she betrays Indy, she's just this total, totally unlikable, and you know, whatever redeeming qualities she may have had, you know, are really not there. I mean, you do kind of get the idea, again, that she's trying to be a new Indy because you have the relationship with her and Teddy, which is just the mirror of him and of Indy and Short Round from Temple of Doom, like I said. And they even reference those things, like, you know, Indy talks about, like, I drank the blood of Kali, I did this, I got dragged by a tank, I got dragged by this, I had to swing across a valley, I've been shot multiple times, I got a plate in my leg, I got screws all over me because of all the bones I've broken, like, he talks about, being old and following through on that. And like I said, those parts I do think work really well, but then it's just, we keep trying to, like, bounce off of Helena, and it's just not working. They don't really seem to have much chemistry at all. And I don't mean that in a romantic way. I just mean I just don't buy them as a double act at all. They just fall really flat. So yeah, that's kind of why I don't think it works as well as it probably should have.
Before the Lost Ark, before the Temple of Doom, before the Last Crusade, the man with the hat was just a boy with a dream.
Someday I'm going to be an archaeologist.
You're never too young to start learning.
How am I doing?
Explore Indy's adventures from the beginning. Sean Patrick Flannery is Indiana Jones in the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles. Sundays at 11:10 Central on USA.
Dear Dad,
Before he became a legend,
I've joined the Mexican Revolution.
he was young Indy,
Sorry about high school.
riding with Pancho Villa and running guns in the Congo. For him, just growing up was the greatest adventure of all. He lives a life others only dream of. The adventures begin tomorrow.
Definitely gonna miss high school.
George Lucas presents the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles.
Okay, trailer time, and we only got 5 trailers here, so we can zip right through them, because I think, these are all ones we've had before. We had Gran Turismo, The Meg 2, Haunted Mansion, Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1, that's a mouthful, and then we rounded off with Oppenheimer. Like I said, I guess we had Oppenheimer once at least, but anyway, like I said, nothing too big there. Not too much to really say. I guess it turns out Gran Turismo is actually based on a true story. I did not believe that at first, but apparently it is. A real guy who got a job as a Grand Touring sports car racer because he was a Gran Turismo player. Anyway, after that, it's our next video is going to be recap and review for Money in the Bank 2023. After that, it's going to be episodes 2 and 3 of Secret Invasion. Then it'll be the random trade review on The Amazing Spider-Man Masterworks Volume 1. And next movie review is, it's going to be a while. It's going to be Barbie, which comes out on the 21st of July. So yeah, we're getting basically 3 weeks off of movies, and then 3 weeks of movies after that, because it'll be Barbie, Haunted Mansion, and Ninja Turtles, and those are like back to back to back. And then we're gonna round off the summer with Blue Beetle. I'd like to do some of those other movies that are coming up, but finances got hit really hard in June. The fact that just about everything came out in June, just kind of did me in, unfortunately. Like I said, it's not a terrible thing, but it's just like, I can't afford to do this on a weekly basis. Even doing matinees, it's just too much. I don't have AMC stubs anymore because we don't have an AMC theater. We don't have a Regal Cinema, so I can't use their thing. So this is kind of how it has to be. Sorry to end on kind of a downer, but don't worry, we'll still have fun. See you all next time. Hey guys, remember you can request a movie or a television series for me to review at my Patreon at patreon.com/CPTime for Cat Productions. Also, remember to like the video, comment, share, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so that you can be alerted to further videos.